I'm Bill Clark. I'm the Global Vice President of Mobile Strategy. I've been with SAP for about 3 years. Have all kinds of background in the wireless industry and infrastructure, industrial automation, and of course mobile applications and strategy.
So what part does mobile play in the overall strategy of SAP?
SAP, if you walk around the show here at Sapphire, you'll see that it's permeating just about every kiosk that you visit, right? Whether it's consuming the information from analytics, whether it's playing a role or in a part of a user story about Internet of Things, whether it's around Fiori, around mobilizing Fiori. So it's really everywhere. It's in across all the lines of business, industry business units.
Can you tell me a little bit more about Fiori?
Yeah, so with Fiori, Fiori stands for Italian for flower, right? And it's our idea of taking the user experience and making each and every one of them beautiful and seamless and linked. And so where mobile starts to fit in with Fiori is then you get into some of the details of, well, how do I make it secure? How do I make it that much more simple when, for example, maybe I don't have the greatest wireless coverage and so I need to go offline for a little bit. Well, you still want it to be beautiful, and you want to remove that moment where you say, oh, I lost my coverage. You want it to be that much more simple in terms of consuming the data. And then all that should be magic underneath the scenes.
So let's talk about a hot topic that your CEO was talking about earlier, the S4 HANA. What effect do you see that playing on the mobile landscape?
So S4 HANA causes a transformation from the core of an application, of a business process. And so one of the ways that I like to think of it from a mobile strategy point of view is that's the inside out, but what about the outside in? And that's where mobile will enhance. So as you rethink those possibilities because of the power of the in-memory computing and the changes that sweep across everything in our suite, then you can also say, well, now I've got a new use case where I'm consuming or creating information that can then flow right into that new business process. So it's not just about rethinking because of the speed of computing, but it's rethinking because of all the different assets that we now have in this world of the Internet of Things and the expanded mobile ecosystem.
So data is huge. And it's driving the economy now. What does a data-driven economy mean to the mobile industry?
Right, yeah, that's a great way of looking at it, and we'll translate in the mobile world kind of a metadata, and the data-driven economy will be led by metadata-driven user experiences. So things anticipating, we've used this theme here at the conference, anticipating things before people know they even need them, right? And that gets into the context-aware, and your context-aware computing, and the change in mobile and user experience around that. So it's that anticipation, and then in each industry we think it'll be a little bit different in terms of monetizing that. Is it ads? Is it simply enhancing a key business process where it's a very expensive process like field service with predictive maintenance? You can take that data and turn that into a predictive maintenance event rather than a break-fix event. And that's all linked into mobile. It all sounds great conceptually, but there's a long line of things that have to happen. And the beauty of SAP and mobile is that we have applications out like Inventory Manager and Work Manager that have already embodied many of those steps, and now we're just enhancing it with a little bit more predictive insights on the front end.
So SAP is new to the IoT, kind of, correct?
Right, yeah, relatively new.
How is it changing your business strategy?
Great question. One of the key elements is rethinking, and I'll build on the Fiori and the UX. So you start out with a user story, and you talk about responsive design and mobile, and now with Internet of Things, whether it's a watch from Apple or an Android watch, now you can rethink that user story. And as I mentioned before, it's permeating all the different use cases, all the different applications. So now we need to go back through and help our customers and help our industry business units rethink what that implication of that one new gadget type is. And so now you multiply that, whether it's partnerships, if you look in the industry, things like Google Nest, where you're rethinking how you manage your home. And there's new value points that are being created as the industry really rethinks itself triggered by Internet of Things. And people will say, well, Internet of Things, it's hype, it's not going to live up. Well, the big thing is it's a catalyst to cause us to rethink things.
So what are the challenges for security going forward?
Security, I'll start with Internet of Things, right? One of the biggest challenges is if you look at the use cases and you look at the residue, right? Some of these new objects that are coming into our world will have memory, and there will be residue there. There'll be content. Maybe it's as simple as a phone number. If you're a celebrity, that one phone number that you leave behind in that car that you borrowed now becomes a huge privacy issue for you, right? So it's those advanced use cases where we think our combination of having mobile security and analytics can help you through risk-based management and context-aware computing prevent some of those, detect the threat before it happens. So for example, you're traveling in a foreign country. Okay, you have a profile around that. Well, let's tighten things up a little bit. As opposed to you're tooling around your neighborhood and your home. There's a little bit of a different trust level that you can set.
Yeah.
So it's those advanced use cases that are key around security.
So what are your key partnerships? Who are you teaming up with?
I guess a couple I'd like to point out. One is Ericsson. So Ericsson is taking mobility to another level of scale. So if I look at the era, let's say roughly from around 2011 through 2019, we're going to look back at that. That's the era where at the beginning of that era, about 10%, 12% of the population, global population, had a smartphone as opposed to a feature phone. By the time we get to 2019 with the adoption rate, now you can assume it's 70 to 80%. So even though those of us in the mobile industry, we're used to this. We've been using these mobile devices and smartphones for a decade. Really, it's going to hit, and that's the exciting piece. That's the piece that's a bit of a game changer. By the time we get to 2019, and we're roughly halfway there, that's going to be the game changer in terms of scale. And that's where Ericsson comes in. So right now, it's been a lot of large enterprises that have been able to invest in mobility. Ericsson gives SAP a capability to work with telcos to then serve the SMBs, all the guys who are out there running a small lawnmower service or a single man shop. Well, how do they consume mobility? And that's going to be a key. Another partnership today, you saw Eric Schmidt with Google talking about the implications of Google and Android for Work and all of that. So that's an important partnership to us because we're at an interesting point in the market right now. Give or take, depending on which numbers you look at, we've got about an overall market share worldwide on smartphones for Google of around 80–85%. Apple's sitting at 15–20%, with a few other important players out there, but just making it very simple. If you look at the enterprise, it's the inverse. In some sense, Apple has replaced BlackBerry as being kind of the de facto safe bet for CIOs. Well, as the market changes, as we get further up that adoption curve, we think that you'll see more of a push by Android into the enterprise. And we think Android for Work is a great step with that, and we're working very close with Google to enable that for our customers.
So mobile commerce is somewhat of a new focus. What's your mobile commerce strategy?
Mobile commerce, well, for one thing, from the Sybase acquisition, it actually goes back a while. So we have what Sybase had called their Mobilizer product. That's now packaged as a part of SAP mobile platform, SMP, consumer edition. And so with that, you can put together a full-scale mobile banking solution, mobile payment solution. And we have a lot of customers worldwide. Standard Bank of South Africa, Dutch Bangla Bank in Bangladesh, banks all over the world are using that. So that, we have a pretty good base for B2C. Now, if we combine that with our other acquisition of Hybris, which is multi-channel e-commerce, it's been a lot of B2B, but they've got a nice offering for business to consumer. And that's where it gets real interesting because business to consumer meets business to business. I'll pick one vertical industry, retail. In a retail store, you have the scenario where you've got your consumer who's been shopping, maybe at home, they start out on their laptop, but now they're on their phone, they walk into your shop. Well, your salesperson also has a device of some type. And now they're starting to interact, and it's very important that they're interacting in a consistent way with the back-end system, and also consistent from a user experience point of view. And so SAP thinks that those scenarios are going to be key going forward, and that's where we bring in Fiori, that's where we bring in our analytics, our user experience knowledge, and above all, we bring in mobile security. We look at that risk-based management, and within that overall framework, we realize that, especially in the consumer case, you're not guaranteed as to what, if any, mobile device management package they're using. They may not be using any, the thing may be completely set open, right? No password protection or any kind of protection whatsoever. We can then provide an umbrella over that for risk-based management to say, well, this person is interacting with us, they've shared enough with us that we realize that they're maybe on a device that's fairly insecure. Let's take a different approach towards how we cache the data, how we approach that piece for that particular user. So we think B2C is a big frontier for us.
So, last question, what do you think the big takeaway of the Sapphire Now show will be?
I think one thing I touched on in the opening, which is mobile is everywhere. Mobile first is just a base assumption. So now the question is, what are the building blocks beyond so that our customers can move towards advanced use cases in every single industry that we serve? And that a lot of that will be built around our ability to process big data and put that into context. So it's that injection of context on top of mobility is kind of the takeaway. That's an underlying theme that you saw in Bill's keynote, and you'll see that whenever you visit some of the kiosks. There's always that and. It's the 1 + 1 + 1 = 5, and that's what we're going to. So I think that's, if I had to leave with that, it's the 1 + 1 + 1 = 5. It's that really great, protected, seamless user experience that's great, and it's that end-to-end perspective that allowed it to happen.